This piece is, I think, some of the ideas I have about theater circa January 1965. Revolutionary theater. The revolutionary theater should force change. It should be change. All their faces turned into the lights, and you work on them black nigger magic and cleanse them at having seen the ugliness. And if the beautiful see themselves, they will love themselves. We are preaching virtue again. But by that to mean now what seems the most constructive uses of the world. The revolutionary theater must expose, show up the insides of these humans, look into black skulls. White men will cower before this theater because it hates them, because they have been trained to hate. The revolutionary theater must hate them for hating, for presuming with their technology to deny the supremacy of the spirit. They will all die because of this. The revolutionary theater must teach them their deaths. It must crack their faces open to the mad cries of the poor. It must teach them about silence and the truths lodged there. It must kill any god anyone names except common sense. The revolutionary theater should flush the fags and murders out of Lincoln's face. It should stagger through our universe correcting, insulting, preaching, spitting craziness, but a craziness taught to us in our most rational moments. People must be taught to trust true scientists, knowers, diggers, oddballs, and that the holiness of life is the constant possibility of widening the consciousness, and they must be incited to strike back against any agency that attempts to prevent this widening. The revolutionary theater must accuse and attack anything that can be accused and attacked. It must accuse and attack because it is a theater of victims. It looks at the sky with the victim's eyes and moves the victims to look at the strength in their minds and their bodies. Clay in Dutchman, Ray in The Toilet, Walker in The Slave are all victims. In the Western sense, they could be heroes, but the revolutionary theater, even if it is Western, must be anti-Western. It must show horrible coming attractions of the crumbling of the West. Even as Artaud designed the conquest of Mexico, so we must design the conquest of White-Eye and show the missionaries and wiggly liberals dying under blasts of concrete. For sound effects, wild screams of joy from all the peoples of the world. The revolutionary theater must take dreams and give them a reality. It must isolate the ritual and historical cycles of reality. But it must be food for all those who need food, and daring propaganda for the beauty of the human mind. But it is a political theater, a weapon to help in the slaughter of these dim-witted, fat-bellied white guys who somehow believe that the rest of the world is here for them to slobber on. This should be a theater of world spirit, where the spirit can be shown to be the most competent force in the world. Force, spirit, feeling. The language will be anybody's, but tightened by the poet's backbone. And even the language must show what the facts are in this consciousness epic, what's happening. We will talk about the world, and the preciseness with which we are able to summon the world will be our art. Art is method, and art, like any ashtray or senator, remains in the world. Wittgenstein said ethics and aesthetics are one. I believe this. So the Broadway theater is a theater of reaction whose ethics, like its aesthetics, reflects the spiritual values of this unholy society which sends young crackers all over the world blowing off colored people's heads. In some of these flippy southern towns, they even shoot up the immigrant's favorite son, be it Michael Schwerner or J.F. Kennedy. The revolutionary theater is shaped by the world and moves to reshape the world, using as its force the natural force and perpetual vibrations of the mind in the world. We are history and desire, what we are and what any experience can make us. It is a social theater, but all theater is social theater. But we will change the drawing rooms into places where real things can be said about a real world, or into smoky rooms where the destruction of Washington can be plotted. The revolutionary theater must function like an incendiary pencil planted in Curtis LeMay's cap, so that when the final curtain goes down, brains are splattered over the seats and the floor, and bleeding nuns must wire SOSs to Belgians with gold teeth. Our theater will show victims so that their brothers in the audience will be better able to understand that they are the brothers of victims and that they themselves are victims if they are blood brothers. And what we show must cause the blood to rush so that pre-revolutionary temperaments will be bathed in this blood, and it will cause their deepest souls to move, and they find themselves tensed and clenched, even ready to die at what the soul has been taught. We will scream and cry, murder, run through the streets in agony, if it means some soul will be moved to actual life, understanding of what the world is and what it ought to be. We are preaching virtue and feeling and a natural sense of the self in the world. All men live in the world, and the world ought to be a place for them to live. What is called the imagination, from image, magi, magic, magician, is a practical vector from the soul. It stores all data and can be called on to solve all our problems. The imagination is the projection of ourselves past our sense of ourselves as, quote, things, unquote. Imagination, image, is all possibility. Because from the image, the initial circumscribed energy, any use, idea is possible. And so begins that image's use in the world. Possibility is what moves us. The popular white man's theater, like the popular white man's novel, shows tired white lives and the problems of eating white sugar. Or else it herds big caboosed blondes onto huge stages and rhinestones and makes believe they are dancing or singing. White businessmen of the world, do you want to see people really dancing and singing? All of you go up in Harlem and get yourself killed. There will be dancing and singing then for real. In The Slave, Walker Vessels, the black revolutionary, wears an armband, which is the insignia of the attacking army, a big red-lipped minstrel grinning like crazy. The liberal white man's objection to the theater of the revolution, if he is, quote, hip, unquote, enough, will be on aesthetic grounds. Most white Western artists do not need to be political, since usually, whether they know it or not, they are in complete sympathy with the most repressive social forces in the world today. There are more junior birdmen fascists running around the West today disguised as artists than there are disguised as fascists. But then that word fascist, and with it fascism, has been made obsolete by the word America and Americanism. The American artist usually turns out to be just a super bourgeois because finally all he has to show for his sojourn through the world is, quote, better taste, unquote, than the bourgeois. Many times not even that. Americans will hate the revolutionary theater because it will be out to destroy them and whatever they believe is real. American cops will try to close the theaters where such nakedness of the human spirit is paraded. American producers will say the revolutionary plays are filth, usually because they will treat human life as if it was actually happening. American directors will say that the white guys in the plays are too abstract and cowardly, quote, don't get me wrong, I mean aesthetically, quote, and they will be right. The force we want is of 20 million spooks storming America with furious cries and unstoppable weapons. We want actual explosions and actual brutality. An epic is crumbling, and we must give it the space and hugeness of its actual demise. The revolutionary theater, which is now peopled with victims, will soon begin to be peopled with new kinds of heroes. Not Hamlets debating whether or not they are ready to die for what's on their minds, but men and women and minds digging out from under 1,000 years of high art and weak-faced dalliance. We must make an art that will function as to call down the actual wrath of world spirit. We are witch doctors and assassins, but we will open a place for the true scientists to expand our consciousness. This is a theater of assault. The play that will split the heavens for us will be called The Destruction of America. The heroes will be Crazy Horse, Denmark Vesey, Patrice Lumumba. But not history, not memory, not sad, sentimental groping for a warmth in our despair. These will be new men, new heroes, and their enemies, most of you who are listening to this.